the distinguished representative of Jamaica to take the floor.
Mr. President, let me first express my delegation's warm welcome and best wishes to His Excellency Mr. Bruno Rodriguez Padilla, Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Cuba. Jamaica aligns itself with the statements delivered by St. Lucia on behalf of the Caribbean community and by Uganda on behalf of G77 and China on the necessity of ending the economic, commercial, and financial embargo imposed by the United States of America against Cuba. My delegation thanks the Secretary General of the United Nations for his regular reports on this important issue and for maintaining a forum for UN member states to articulate their perspectives on this unilateral policy, which Jamaica continues to believe is in violation of international law and contrary to the purposes and principles of the United Nations Charter. Jamaica values the significance of participating in the discussions under this important agenda item and continues to join the international community in expressing its unwavering solidarity with the government and people of the Republic of Cuba on this call for the removal of this irrelevant and decades-old blockade on Cuba. The embargo has not only inflicted unnecessary wounds to the Cuban economy, but also stifles the development aspirations and the growth potential of the Cuban people. Mr. President, Jamaica considers this prolonged blockade against Cuba to be contrary to the norms and ethos governing friendly relations among states, international trade, and navigation. It continues to be the main obstacle to the prosperity and to the realization of the genuine aspirations of the Cuban people. This blockade has hindered progress on Cuba's national plan for economic and social development and impeded Cuba's implementation of Agenda 2030 and her attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals. The embargo has frustrated efforts by the government of Cuba to contribute to the global fight against climate change, transnational crime, and poverty. It has also hampered initiatives aimed at women's empowerment, social protection for the most vulnerable, and transformation of the economy and society in a constantly changing global environment. The embargo against Cuba has stymied economic, commercial, and financial activities, thereby hindering regular access to bilateral trade, importation of goods, and access to financial mechanisms through formal and institutional channels. The embargo has deterred Cuba's effective response to exogenous shocks, including the impact of health emergencies such as the COVID-19 pandemic, natural disasters, and global food, energy, and health crises. Such crises have had significant negative and lasting effects on women, children, the elderly, people with disabilities, and other vulnerable groups in Cuba. The unmerited inclusion of Cuba on the United States list of state sponsors of terrorism further restricts entities from conducting legitimate business with Cuba and deepens the challenges for third states' engagement with Cuba on trade, investment, developmental aid, and international cooperation on transnational organized crime and provision of technical assistance. Therefore, we continue to express our concerns about the impact of continuing the blockade and the grave systemic implications of the extraterritorial application of the United States of America laws regulating transactions, directly or indirectly. For far too long, the people of Cuba have suffered in an unjustified and undignified manner as a result of this embargo. The undue hardship imposed has impacted and affected every facet of life and livelihood of the Cuban people. Mr. President, the international community has been seized of this matter since the first tabling of this resolution at the 46th session of the United Nations General Assembly in 1991. Every year since 1992, the international community has consistently, profoundly, and resoundingly expressed support, as is evidenced in the favorable voting outcomes for the need to end this blockade against Cuba. As a peaceful member and development advocate within the international community, Jamaica welcomed the re-establishment of diplomatic relations between Cuba and the United States in 2015, which has served to ease restrictions in a number of areas. But notwithstanding this positive step in the right direction, we have seen reversals in the more recent past. In any event, even those measures were not far-reaching enough and cannot be a substitute for the lifting of the embargo to allow the Cuban people's access to critical financial resources, health products and services, inputs for industrial activities, and importantly, their right to development. Mr. President, I will close by reiterating Jamaica's calls for advancing dialogue between Cuba and the United States. Jamaica reaffirms its commitment to stand in solidarity with the government and people of Cuba in concerted efforts with the majority of the members of the United Nations, and call for the removal of the embargo and for the full inclusion of the Republic of Cuba in the international community. The benefits and cycle of international development cooperation are upended as long as a member of the international community is unreasonably deprived of opportunities to contribute to our collective vision of a safe, just, sustainable, prosperous, and progressive world. Jamaica will therefore vote in favor of the resolution. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative